The year was 2387, and Eos, was dying. Not with fire or plague, but with the slow, inevitable sigh of a world running out of breath. The colony's twin suns, once golden and generous, had begun to dim behind a permanent veil of iron-red dust. The storms that once lasted days now lasted months. Crops failed in perfect rows, irrigation pipes froze even at noon, and the atmospheric oxygen processors, great cathedral-sized lungs built by the first wave of settlers, coughed black soot into a sky that no longer bothered to turn blue. In the Capitol Dome of New Tycho, Governor Amrita Voss addressed the final session of the Colonial Assembly. She was 48 standard years old, thin as a blade, and her voice carried the particular exhaustion of someone who had spent 2 decades preparing for an ending she could no longer postpone. "We have 47,000 souls are all that remain of the Eos experiment," she said. "Terra Prime has not answered a transmission in 14 months. The relay satellites are dark. The last supply arc, the Mercy of Ceres, never arrived. We must now accept that no help is coming. Ever. Coming." A murmur rippled through the chamber. Someone in the back began to weep quietly. Amrita raised a hand. "But we will not accept extinction. Project Lazarus is ready." Project Lazarus was not a ship. It was a seed. 120 cryo-arches, each holding 1,000 sleeping colonists, bolted inside the hollowed-out shell of an asteroid renamed Ashira. The asteroid had been nudged into a slow, decaying orbit that would, in 9 months, slingshot it out of the Eos system on a 400-year journey toward the distant Gliese 832c, a super-Earth wrapped in cloud that old probes had once called marginally habitable. The math was brutal, the margins non-existent, but it was the only vector left. The Assembly voted unanimously. There was nothing else to vote on. In the weeks that followed, New Tycho transformed into an anthill kicked by a god. Families said families lined up for medical screening. Children were told bedtime stories about the new world that waited beyond the dark. The elderly volunteered to stay behind so that younger lungs could have the pods. The colony prepared for the end with a serene, terrible efficiency of people who had nothing left to lose. And then Terra Prime answered. The signal arrived without warning on the 87th day of evacuation, writing an obsolete military encryption that hadn't been used since the Resource Wars. It was short, cold, and signed by an authority no one on Eos had ever expected to hear from again, the United Earth Systems Command, UEAR. To all colonial governors, stand down evacuation. Prepare for immediate reclamation. Any attempt to launch unauthorized vessels will be considered an act of war. Repeat, stand down. Terra Prime endures. Attached was a set of coordinates and a single line. Fleet arrives in 41 days. Amrita Voss read the message 17 times in her office beneath the dome, the red dust tapping against the transparisteel like impatient fingers. Then she forwarded it to her chief of security, Colonel Lev Kincaid, formerly of the Martian 19th Orbital Drop Legion, currently the only person on the planet with real combat experience. Lev arrived still smelling of gun oil and hydroponic fertilizer. He read the message once, grunted, and said the first sensible thing anyone had said in weeks. "They're lying." Amrita arched an eyebrow. "About which part?" "All of it. Terra went dark because something ate it. Whatever's coming isn't the UESC. It's what's left after the UESC lost." He was half right. 39 days later, the sky over Eos split open. They came in low and fast, matte black hulls that drank the starlight, no running lights, no transponders. The lead vessel was the USV Tamerlane, a dreadnought class that had been listed, missing presumed destroyed, above Luna in 2371. Its silhouette was wrong now. Barnacles of alien alloy had been grafted to its spine, its gun ports replaced by organic-looking apertures that pulsed with violet light. Behind it came 37 more ships, each one a Frankenstein of old human engineering and something that had never evolved under a yellow sun. They did not hail the colony. They simply began to land. Lev Kincaid watched the first wave touch down on the salt flats outside New Tycho through a macroscope. The ships didn't lower ramps. They opened like flowers, petals peeling back to vomit pale figures in carapace armor that flexed like living chitin. The soldiers moved wrong, too many joints, too much speed, and when they raised their weapons, the barrels glowed the same violet as the ships. Posthumans, Lev said quietly. The Assimilation Front.
Shit.
They actually did it. Amrita felt her stomach fold in on itself. Everyone had heard the stories. Rogue AIs, gene forges run by exiled trillionaries, a war fought in the outer system that humanity had lost so completely the losers rewrote their own biology to survive victory. The front had vanished beyond Neptune 40 years ago. Apparently, they had not died. They had improved. Lev turned from the scope. They'll want the cryo-arches. 10,000 pure-strain humans on ice? That's the best breeding stock in the galaxy right now. We can't let them have the sleepers, Amrita said. No, Lev agreed. We can't. That night the colony stopped preparing for the end and started preparing for war. They had 36 hours. Lev took every able-bodied adults 18 to 50 and turned them into something resembling soldiers. Amrita stripped the colony of everything that could kill: mining charges, plasma cutters, rail spike launchers meant for breaking asteroids, even the emergency fusion bottles from the atmosphere plants. Children too young to fight were loaded into the first 20 arches and shot into the dark on automated tugs, small, worthless targets the enemy might ignore. The elderly and the sick recorded messages for the sleepers who would, with luck, wake up centuries from now around a different star. The Ashira itself could not launch yet. Its slingshot window was still 9 days away. Until then it hung in high orbit like a silver fruit, defenseless. On the 40th day, the Assimilation Front attacked. They came at dawn, marching in perfect silence across the salt flats, violet fire stitching the air. Lev's militia met them at the outer berm with everything they had. The battle lasted 4 hours and ended the way anyone with eyes could have predicted.
By noon the berm was gone.
By dusk the outer habdomes were burning. By nightfall the enemy had reached the central plaza of New Tycho and discovered that the remaining cryo-arches, 98 of them, 98,000 lives, had been moved. Amrita Voss stood on the roof of the governor's residence, wind whipping her coat around her legs, and watched the violet lights advance through her dying city. Beside her, Lev Kincaid was bleeding from a head wound that had soaked half his face crimson. "They'll find the tunnel to the spaceport in minutes," he said. "I know. We can still scuttle the arches. Thermite charges are primed." Amrita looked toward the sky. The Ashira was a bright moving star, crawling toward its escape vector. Somewhere up there, 120,000 colonists slept inside a rock, dreaming of rain on an alien world.
"No," she said.
"We bought them 9 days. Let's make it 9 days they'll never forget." Lev grinned through the blood. Suicide run? Something better. The plan was insane, beautiful, and born of pure spite. While Lev led the last 400 fighters in a feigned retreat toward the spaceport, Amrita and a team of engineers took the colony's 3 remaining fusion shuttles and flew them, unmanned, remote-piloted, straight into the Tamerlane's main hangar. The shuttles were packed with every gram of antimatter the colony had left, enough to crack a moon. The explosion lit the sky white for 8 full seconds. When the flash faded, the Tamerlane was a broken spine tumbling in low orbit, bleeding atmosphere and bodies. Half the assimilation fleet lost formation trying to avoid the debris cloud. It bought them 36 hours. In those 36 hours, the survivors dragged the 98 arches through maintenance tunnels to a forgotten maglev that ran beneath the salt flats. At the far end waited the Ashira's original launch cradle, an electromagnetic rail 20 kilometers long, built for the asteroid's initial boost and then abandoned when the slingshot plan proved more elegant. They would not get another miracle. They would have to make one. Lev Kincaid died on the 8th day, holding the maglev junction with 20 volunteers so the last arch could be loaded. Amrita kissed his forehead while he was still warm, took a sidearm, and kept moving. On the 9th day the sky was on fire. The Assimilation Front had regrouped, angrier now, and their remaining ships were burning retros to descend directly onto the launch cradle. Violet lightning walked across the salt. Amrita stood in the control bunker with 12 engineers and watched the countdown to orbital window tick down to 4 minutes and 17 seconds. One of the engineers, a young woman named Priya, whose husband was already asleep in Arch 77, asked the only question left. "Governor, there's no one left to crew the Ashira. The AI core was damaged in the fighting. Who's going to fly her?" Amrita looked at the banks of cryo-arches, at the faces behind the frost, mothers, children, old men who had given their pods to teenagers, and felt something inside her chest finally snap loose. "I am," she said. They begged her to take a pod. She refused. Someone had to stay awake to arm the rail, to override the safeties, to make sure the asteroid cleared atmosphere before the enemy could board. Someone had to be the last citizen of Eos At T-minus 42 seconds, the first assimilation drop pods punched through the bunker's roof. Priya and the others died, buying Amrita the last 20 seconds she needed. Amrita Voss sat alone in the control chair, blood on her teeth, and watched the launch sequencers turn green one by one. Outside, the cradle thrummed. 20 kilometers of superconducting rail began to sing. The Ashira rose slowly at first, a mountain tearing itself free of gravity, then faster, faster, until the sky cracked with thunder and the asteroid became a new star racing toward the dark. Amrita opened a colony-wide channel that no one was still, somehow, working. "This is Governor Voss," she said, voice perfectly calm. "To whoever wakes up on the other side, live well, live long. And if anyone ever comes looking for us wearing violet, remember what we did here." Then she turned to face the creatures pouring through the shattered doors, raised Lev's sidearm, and smiled. The last thing the Assimilation Front saw on Eos, for was a woman with dust in her hair and fire in her eyes, holding a door they could never open again. 407 years later, a battered asteroid drifted into high orbit around Gliese 832c. Its surface was scarred by micrometeorites and old battle damage, but the cryo-arches inside were intact. The first child born on the new world was named Amrita. The second was named Lev. And in the central plaza of the first city, beneath two gentle suns that never turned red, they raised a statue of a woman standing on a bunker roof, looking up at a departing star. The inscription was simple. She prepared for the end. We prepared for the beginning.